Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. During the Yongle era of the Ming dynasty, Zheng He led an enormous fleet on 7 voyages to the Western Oceans, launching a maritime expedition that captured the attention of the world. This fleet consisted of more than 60 grand treasure ships, each built using the most advanced shipbuilding techniques of the time. The hull of each ship was ingeniously divided into several watertight compartments so that even if one section was breached, the entire vessel would not sink. Meanwhile, the keel was crafted from a single massive timber, significantly enhancing the ship's structural strength. According to records in the Mingshi and Mingshilu, each treasure ship was rigged with 9 masts, towering masts with interlacing sails that created a breathtaking maritime spectacle. In contrast, the largest European ships of the period were only about 30 meters in length, a fact that undoubtedly astonished Western observers when they beheld Zheng He's vessels. However, during Zheng He's 4th voyage, one treasure ship mysteriously disappeared in the waters near Ceylon, present-day Sri Lanka. Occurring amid the shifting monsoons and complex sea conditions with extremely low visibility, the ship vanished suddenly amidst the rolling waves, adding an element of intrigue to the maritime expedition. In recent years, marine archaeologists have discovered remnants of a Ming-era shipwreck off the western coast of Sri Lanka. The artifacts recovered, such as blue and white porcelain and copper coins, have not definitively confirmed the identity of the missing treasure ship, but they have spurred further scholarly investigation into the construction techniques and navigational safety of these vessels. Historical sources also reveal that these treasure ships were reinforced with a considerable amount of iron nails and iron plates, a method that was innovative for the metallurgical standards of the time. Yet, this technique also introduced challenges in handling. Some accounts note that the ship's great inertia made them prone to collisions during sharp turns, and when fully loaded, their draft could reach as deep as 7 to 8 meters. Such conditions meant that these vessels could only safely navigate deep channels and might become stranded in shallower waters, which may have contributed to the disappearance of the lost ship. Zheng He's voyages were not only about trade and diplomacy, they also showcased the maritime strength and technological prowess of the Ming dynasty. While the primary aim was peaceful commerce, the very presence of such a vast fleet functioned as a powerful deterrent, comparable to a modern aircraft carrier group, demonstrating the nation's strength and its spirit of openness. In recent times, some marine archaeologists have suggested that the missing treasure ship may have sunk due to the limitations imposed by its massive structure when faced with severe storms, a perspective that offers new insights into ancient maritime technology and ship design. The detailed navigational charts from Zheng He's expeditions, which precisely marked reefs and dangerous zones along the route, not only provide contemporary archaeologists with valuable data for reconstructing the ancient routes but also testify to the deep understanding Ming navigators had of the maritime environment. From the magnificent construction of the fleet to the enduring mystery of a lost ship, Zheng He's voyages have left behind a historical narrative that is as compelling and meticulously documented as it is legendary. In the long river of human history, the ocean has not only been a natural gift but also a bridge for the exchange of civilizations. In the early 15th century, the Ming dynasty in China, at the height of its power with vast territories and a flourishing culture, not only consolidated its land-based rule but also embarked on an unprecedented maritime endeavor. In 1405, the explorer Zheng He was commissioned by the Yongle Emperor to lead a fleet composed of hundreds of grand ships that set sail from Nanjing, launching a series of 7 voyages to the Western Oceans. This fleet sailed across the South China Sea, reaching as far as the eastern coast of Africa, establishing exchanges with many countries along the way and demonstrating the strength and dignity of the great Ming dynasty. However, after Zheng He's final return in 1435, the fleet never set sail again, and Ming maritime activities gradually fell silent. Meanwhile, half a century later, when Columbus discovered the New World and explorers braved the seas to open the age of discovery, China failed to continue Zheng He's legacy. Why did the Ming dynasty lose its maritime edge at such a crucial moment? The answer lies not only in fiscal or strategic shifts but more deeply in the very core of its policies. Zheng He, originally named Ma He and born in 1371 to a Muslim family in Yunnan, was captured by Ming forces in 1381 and castrated, entering the palace as an eunuch. His exceptional talent earned him the trust of the Yongle Emperor. In 1405, the emperor sent him to lead the fleet, beginning his 7 voyages. According to the Mingshi, the fleet was unprecedented in scale, consisting of more than 300 vessels and carrying nearly 28,000 men. The largest treasure ship measured about 120 meters in length and nearly 50 meters in width, with a displacement of several thousand tons, and its navigational technology was unmatched in the world at that time. Zheng He's route spanned Southeast Asia, the coasts of the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Peninsula, and even reached the eastern coast of Africa, visiting more than 30 countries and regions, bringing back spices, gems, ivory, and other precious items that contributed to the re-establishment of the tribute system. Zheng He's voyages were not mere explorations. The Yongle Emperor's objectives were twofold: to search for the fugitive Jiangwen Emperor and to showcase the might of the Ming dynasty abroad. Over the course of 7 voyages, Zheng He not only fulfilled these missions but also employed diplomatic means to bring the nations of the South Seas into Ming suzerainty. Nevertheless, the journeys were fraught with challenges. Storms, disease, and supply shortages constantly threatened the fleet. Despite these hardships, Zheng He's extraordinary organizational and navigational skills ensured the success of each expedition. The splendor of Zheng He's maritime achievements did not last. After his 7th voyage in 1435, the imperial court ceased large-scale naval expeditions, marking a fundamental shift in Ming maritime policy from brief openness to complete seclusion. Historians have proposed several explanations. One view suggests that Zheng He's resounding success convinced the court that there was no longer a maritime threat, prompting a strategic shift toward defending against northern Mongol incursions. Another view points to overwhelming fiscal pressures. Constructing and maintaining the fleet was extraordinarily costly, with each treasure ship costing several thousand taels of silver and additional expenditures for lavish gifts to foreign envoys, placing a heavy burden on the treasury. After the death of the Yongle Emperor, his successors chose to cut expenditures and abandon the overseas voyages. Yet, the cessation of state-sponsored voyages was only the surface change. A deeper transformation was the intensification of anti-seafaring policies. As early as the Hongwu era, the founder Zhu Yuanzhang had ordered that coastal residents were forbidden to sail abroad in order to curb piracy and prevent invasions. Although the Yongle Emperor commissioned Zheng He's expeditions, private maritime activities were never relaxed. In the 3rd year of Yongle, 1405, the court reiterated that, while the sea routes are open to foreign countries, their passage is restricted, and violators were punished. During the Xuande period, following the end of official voyages, the anti-sailing policies were further tightened. The Mingshi records that the court decreed, coastal subjects are forbidden from trading privately with foreign lands, with offenders facing severe penalties, even extending to their families. The enforcement of these maritime prohibitions had far-reaching effects on coastal societies. Residents in Fujian and Guangdong, who had long relied on fishing and maritime trade for their livelihoods, found themselves deprived of their means of subsistence. Many were forced to change occupations or risk resorting to piracy. In the later Ming period, the disturbances caused by pirates grew increasingly severe, largely as a consequence of these restrictive policies. In its attempt to maintain stability through maritime blockade, the court inadvertently spurred dissent among coastal populations. The seclusion of Ming maritime policy stands in stark contrast to Europe. By the end of the 15th century, the maritime endeavors of Portugal and Spain were flourishing. Prince Henry of Portugal established a naval school to sponsor explorers like Vasco da Gama, who opened a sea route to India, while Queen Isabella of Spain supported Columbus in discovering the New World. These nations not only endorsed state-sponsored exploration but also encouraged private maritime trade and colonization. Under government protection, merchants, ship captains, and explorers ventured far afield, their lucrative trade fueling technological progress and national rise. In contrast, the Ming dynasty confined maritime activities strictly to royal prerogative. Although Zheng He's voyages were spectacular, they failed to ignite private maritime enterprise. The anti-sailing policy not only ended state voyages but also stifled the potential for private exploration and trade. While Europeans built vast colonial empires through open maritime policies, Ming ships were consigned to port, leaving coastal residents only able to gaze longingly at the ocean. For instance, when the Portuguese arrived in Macau in 1516, no large merchant fleets remained along China's coast. The very seas once traversed by Zheng He had come under European control. This divergence was not a matter of technical or resource limitations but a consequence of policy choices. Europe's reliance on private enterprise enabled its rise, whereas the Ming's strict monopoly over maritime affairs rendered its brief maritime brilliance ephemeral. Some argue that the loss of maritime prowess in the Ming dynasty was due to fiscal constraints or a strategic pivot, and while those factors played a role, the fundamental cause lay in the court suppression of private seafaring activities. Zheng He's voyages were state-driven achievements, their success dependent on imperial backing rather than spontaneous private initiative. The anti-sailing policy severed the connection between the people and the ocean. Once the court's needs were met, maritime endeavor ceased. Renowned historian Huang once suggested that the Ming abandoned maritime ventures due to a laissez-faire policy, but in reality, the dynasty exercised excessive control. Aside from the royal fleet, private vessels were strictly prohibited from venturing out. Such a policy deprived China of the opportunity to lead during the Age of Discovery, when Europe, harnessing private enterprise, rose to global prominence. Zheng He's voyages represent the pinnacle of Ming maritime history, their routes surpassing those of contemporary nations. Yet, the brilliance of these achievements was not sustained. The court's short-sightedness and stringent controls led China to retreat from the ocean stage. This story illustrates that national prosperity depends not only on grand, state-led endeavors but also on unleashing the potential of the people. Only by allowing free exploration and innovation can a nation remain competitive on the global stage. This is History and Culture Channel. Like and subscribe are the biggest help and support for us. Thank you everyone. See you next time.